Grant Kingsley didn't knock. Billionaires never do. The doors to Horizon Tower's executive boardroom flew wide as his entourage peeled off like fighter jets, leaving their commander to stride alone toward the mahogany table. He was immaculate in a graphite suit, a glinting watch mapping time zones he barely respected. In his hand, a thick Japanese contract in a leather folder that cost more than most monthly rents. He flung it down so hard crystal glasses chimed and ice clinked in protest. "Translate this," he said, voice amplified by the room's cold marble. "I'll give him all my job." The words were bait and blade at once, and everybody knew it. The cleaning crew had just switched shifts. A woman in a blue uniform, Amara Williams, wiped the glass wall, careful, invisible. Her daughter, a black girl with a navy hoodie and a backpack patched with anime characters and old library barcodes, sat quietly in a corner chair, doing homework. She had permission to wait for her mother before school. No one ever minded, because no one ever noticed. "What's wrong, kid?" Grant's smile didn't reach his eyes. Too stupid to understand grown-up work. The boardroom air curdled. Uneasy glances, phones turned face down, moral compasses spinning. Nobody intervened. Everyone pretended to be very, very busy with nothing at all. The girl lifted her head. Not a flinch, not even a frown. Just steady, human attention, like she'd seen storms before and learned how to breathe inside them. "Is this the final draft?" she asked softly. Snickers broke like static. Grant blinked. "It's the draft that matters." She stood, gathered the scattered papers with deliberate care, and began reading. Not the halting scan of a pretender. Her eyes moved like they knew the path. When she spoke, the room leaned forward because language can be music, and hers rang true. "この契約には重大な問題があります。She said to polite, precise, business level Japanese. There are serious problems in this contract." Saucers where eyes had been. The COO, Dr. Elise Park, nearly spilled her coffee. Across the table, a VP who spoke 4 languages forgot how to blink. The room's acoustics changed. Silence suddenly had a heartbeat. "There are 3 critical translation errors," the girl continued, tone even. "Section 4 shifts liability onto your company in Japanese, while the English says the opposite. Payment terms contradict export norms. And the termination clause gives the other party rights that don't exist in the English version. Signing this would expose Horizon to roughly $12 to $14 million of avoidable losses and a reputational breach in Japan that would take years to heal." Grant's smirk faltered, as if it had been painted on and the paint was cracking. "What did you just?" The girl placed a finger above a line of characters. "Here and here." The wording implies long-term omakase trust, but your English reads like a disposable vendor agreement. They feel insulted, and you don't even know it. A breathless executive found the courage to live-stream competence. He hit record. Screens lifted like suns over horizons of shame. Dr. Park leaned in, scanning the marks the girl indicated, recognizing accuracy the way a surgeon recognizes anatomy. "Who are you?" someone whispered. "Amara," the girl said. "Amara Williams." Grant fumbled for his phone. "Tokyo. Now." The 98-inch screen at the far wall came to life, splitting open to reveal 3 Japanese executives in a minimalist room of pale wood and sunlight. Their bows were subtle, practiced, the dance of respect. Grant attempted an introduction in choppy syllables that collided midair. "Watashi," check translation. "Girl here." Confusion crossed the Tokyo faces, polite but pained. Then Amara stepped closer, as if approaching a precipice she'd already mapped in her mind. "Hajimemashite. Williams, Amara to moshimasu." Her register rose 2 formal notches, honorifics aligned like the teeth of a perfect gear. "Honken de wa go fuben o okake shite moshiwake gozaimasen." It was the kind of Japanese that made native speakers look twice and listen thrice. Relief softened the men on screen. Their voices regained color, speed, and nuance. Soon the boardroom became a conduit. Questions, clarifications, subtle cultural signals that had ricocheted off translation walls for months now flowed like water finding a riverbed. The phrasing in your Japanese draft signals long-term partnership. Amara explained in English for the room, while listening in Japanese for Tokyo. But our English draft reads transactional, short-term, price-driven. It's not just language. It's respect. Phones lit again, Berlin, Dubai, Seoul. A German client had machinery disassembled because one technical verb had been rendered as its opposite. An Arabic investor was ready to walk over a religious business principle translated out of existence. A Korean partner felt slighted. The wrong honorific had thrown away face like a crumpled receipt. Each time, Amara switched tongues as if turning a radio dial. German precise, Arabic warm and principled, Korean calibrated with honorific care. She didn't merely translate vocabulary. She translated intent, etiquette, and the math of dignity. Dr. Park watched the girl with a sudden ache in her chest. The ache of spotting a lighthouse you'd sailed past 100 times in fog, mistaking it for a rock. She lowered her coffee. "Where did you learn this?" she asked during a lull. Amara glanced at her mother's uniform folded on the back of a chair and smiled a little. The library, the internet, and here, listening. Listening to what? To how deals die when people only hear their own language. Grant's phone vibrated. His Seoul facility had just suffered a catastrophic miscommunication. He listened, blanched, and tried to regain altitude with arrogance. "Lucky guesses," he muttered, too loud to be a whisper and too scared to be a roar. "Luck doesn't conjugate honorifics," Dr. Park said. In the corner, Amara Williams squeezed the sponge until water ran between her knuckles. She taught her daughter to clean every surface life put in front of her. She hadn't expected one of those surfaces to be the world. "Translate this," the billionaire had said, and the girl did. The room understood the dare had just boomeranged. At 5:42 a.m., when most skyscrapers dream quietly in the fog, Horizon's emergency line woke the building like a fire bell through stone. Osaka, a chemical leak, conflicting manuals, ambiguous evacuation radius. The on-call translator? Unavailable. The backup? Booked at 9. The clock sneered. Dr. Park ran a red light and a doubt. On the 12th floor, the only motion came from vacuum cords and mop wheels. In the boardroom, same table, same glass walls, sat Amara, a thermos steaming beside a spread of bilingual safety binders she'd found in an unattended credentials drawer. Her backpack leaned against a chair foot like a loyal dog. "Why are you here?" Dr. Park asked, breath short. "Mom clocks in at 5 on Tuesdays. I study until school," Amara said without looking up, one finger tracing a kanji she already knew. "Osaka." Dr. Park put the call on speaker. Panic in Japanese came fast, full of nouns that mean one thing when the building is safe and another when it's not. Amara stepped into the stream and shaped it. "Stop production in Building C," she relayed after 2 brisk minutes. The Japanese manual requires a 500-meter evacuation for this compound. The English version says 200, but it's wrong. There are 47 workers in the fringe zone, Building D, and 3 are already nauseous. The plant manager needs HQ authority to close. "Close it," Dr. Park said, already dialing legal and risk. "They're worried about losing face," Amara added quietly in Japanese, then explained in English. "Calling out errors in HQ manuals can be viewed as disrespect. We must apologize for the documentation mismatch while authorizing the safer protocol." Using phrases that mattered in Osaka, Amara apologized without groveling, authorized without humiliating, and spared without delaying. The floor plans came next. She'd study them the way athletes study angles. She guided first responders through a maze of ducts and valves with vocabulary and no 13-year-old should know, unless she'd been reading while the world looked through her. By 8:03 a.m., sirens fell to a murmur. Everyone was out. The leak was contained. The plant manager, voice shaking, asked who had been on the line. When told, he paused as if making room for gratitude. "Kanojo wa tada no tsuyaku de wa arimasen. Hashi desu. Uechi seto." She isn't just a translator, Amara rendered with a small, embarrassed smile. She is a bridge. News didn't travel. It sprinted. By noon, risk had a slide. Projected losses avoided. $31.4 million. Lives spared, unquantified. Lawsuits averted, unknown but fewer. A second slide revealed the opposite story. 6 months of compounding translation errors with price tags attached like crime scene labels. The German machine fiasco. The Arabic withdrawal. The Korean honorific meltdown that had iced a partnership for 18 months. Threaded through those cases were faint fingerprints, emails, ticket numbers, offhand notes from security cameras, and cleaning schedules. Maintenance staff observed discrepancy. Young girl asked whether honorifics were. Cleaner reported cultural sensitivity issue. Each ignored, because when excellence whispers in the wrong uniform, bureaucracy often drowns it out. At 2:17 p.m., the board assembled with caffeine and defensiveness. Grant arrived late and loud. He wielded policy like a sword and paper like a shield. "We don't promote uncredentialed minors," he said. "We don't entrust high liability tasks to chance. This is a Fortune 50 company, not a talent show." Respectfully, Dr. Park said, "What we've been running is a very expensive ignorance show." A VP gestured toward a compliance binder. Licensure. Licensure we already require for interpreters who can't tell a customer he's been insulted without doing it twice. Dr. Park snapped, surprising herself. She tempered her tone. "Nobody's talking about rubber stamping recklessness. We're talking about recognizing proven competence and building a legal frame around it." Competence. Grant scoffed. Parlor tricks. Memorized phrases. Memorized phrases don't coordinate hazardous materials response and teach you how to apologize in a culture that measures respect with grammar, Dr. Park said. She clicked a video. The Osaka call, compressed to 10 minutes. Voices played, Japanese urgent. Amara's tone a metronome for order. Even the cynics stopped fidgeting. When it ended, the room felt different, like altitude had changed and ears were popping. "What do you want?" a board member asked. "A role that makes sense," Dr. Park replied. "Global communications specialist. A legal framework that allows certified minors to consult under supervision. Skills-based hiring pathways for overlooked internal talent. And one more thing, which is..." Grant folded his arms. "An apology," said a voice at the door. Angela Williams had not been invited, but her name was on the building more than any executives, on nightly logs, on checklists, on the polished glass that made rich people feel richer. She stood with her chin lifted, cleaning gloves in her pocket. "You told my child, translate this, I'll give him all my job. You didn't mean it. But where I come from, we say things like they matter." Red crept up Grant's neck. Defiance fought with shame and chose litigation. "You're out of line. A line you drew," Angela said. A murmur. Cameras cut on again. Not because anyone wanted to live stream a lawsuit, but because people record moments when truth and power collide. It's how they remember which side they chose. "If that's the bargain," Angela continued, voice steady, "keep your job. Give mine to someone who thinks cleaning a table is as important as sitting at it. Give it to a person you can learn from." "Like who?" Grant said, a smirk returning to save his pride from drowning. "Like her," Angela said, nodding at her daughter. Laughter broke out. Nervous at first, then sharper. "Cute," someone muttered. "Offer stands," Angela said, and set her badge on the table. You could hear it land. The sound was the size of a policy. Corporate contrition rarely comes with sincerity on the first draft. It arrives wrapped in compliance, disclaimers, and a PR firm's favorite font. The compromise: Horizon would run a 30-day, high-supervision pilot with Amara acting as liaison across 3 high-risk negotiations and 2 crisis simulations. A proctor would certify her accuracy in real time. Legal would wrap every hour in waivers thick enough to stop a river. Grant agreed, mostly because he expected the pilot to fail and felt safer proving a child couldn't do his company's work than admitting a child had already done it. Day 1 of the pilot started with an innocuous call that curdled in a hazard. A German vendor insisted on Prüfung, an urgent review of schematics. The previous translator had rendered a core verb as rotate instead of shunt, changing the behavior of a machine by 90 degrees and the risk profile by forever. Amara fixed it in 6 minutes, and annotated the schematic with a note polite in German and pointed an engineer. Day 4 brought an Arabic investor who wanted to add a zakat clause that the last interpreter had translated like a tax invoice instead of a moral contract. Amara didn't just render it correctly. She proposed an accounting structure that honored religious intent while satisfying auditors. The investor's sigh of relief was audible even over patchy audio. Finally, someone understands. Day 9 was a simulation that turned real. A strike at the Busan port, rumors swirling in Korean group chats. Logistics froze. A junior manager drafted an English-only update that read like blame. Amara wrote the Korean version herself, with honorifics that didn't condescend and empathy that didn't overpromise. The port liaison replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a paragraph of thanks. Freight lines resumed in hours. By day 15, the proctor had run out of red ink and skepticism. By day 21, the pilot's critics had run out of quiet rooms to complain in. By day 27, legal admitted the liability of not using Amara outweighed the liability of employing her prudently. Meanwhile, a different test, the ugliest kind, was underway in the background. Grant had launched a whisper campaign dressed as a question. What message are we sending, he asked donors and directors over sparkling water and feigned concern, if we elevate a janitor's kid over degreed professionals? What happens to standards? To meritocracy? The word had to be said aloud because hypocrisy loves to hide behind it. Merit, Dr. Park replied in. One meeting is something you measure, not something you assume. She placed a stack of blind proficiency scores on the desk. Japanese business, German technical, Arabic legal, Korean honorific systems. Scores were anonymized and ranked. Amara's ID, hashtag 317, sat first in all columns. Horizon's premier contractor sat 7th in 2, 9th in 1, and 13th in another. Who is number 317? The director asked, already knowing the answer. Someone meritocracy missed, Dr. Park said. Toward the end of the pilot, proof arrived from an unexpected direction. A journalist leaked internal emails from a translation vendor bragging to a competitor about padding hours, reusing templates, and hoping no one in Chicago reads long vowels. The story trended with an easy villain and a better hero. The black girl in a hoodie who could say sorry in more ways than the company could say strategy. Grant's allies advised a pivot. Stand next to the girl at the press conference, someone urged, and the camera will forgive you. He arrived 10 minutes early for optics and ran into Angela polishing the lectern. They looked at each other across a wood grain that reflected both faces. I meant the line as a joke, he said, quieter than his reputation. I heard it as a promise, she replied. Funny how that works. He opened his mouth to argue and found, for once, no synonyms for right. That afternoon, the board voted to formalize Amara's role under a supervised, skill-based exception with a pathway to adult certification. The motion passed 6-1. Dr. Park, who never cried at work, cried anyway. In the hallway afterward, Grant found Amara repacking her backpack. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and hesitated. If you ever want a position when you're older. She looked up with a calm that didn't fit 13 and exactly fit justice. I don't want your job, she said. I want my mother to have choices. Choices, he repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. She hasn't had many, Amara said. You have. Maybe try sharing. He put the card away. Instant karma isn't always a flash of cosmic lightning. Sometimes it's a mirror held steady until a powerful man sees the shape of his posture and decides whether to stand up straight. The stakes were a skyscraper high, and the city knew it. 3 delegations, Tokyo, Berlin, Dubai, arrived under weather that looked cinematic. Horizon had prepped for a year. Feasibility studies, facility tours, draft contracts thick enough to stop bullets, and sometimes clarity. The signing ceremony would seal a $600 million tricontinental partnership and an era. Then the translator team ate bad seafood. All 3, hospitalized, pale apologetic Romanian nurse in the ER, translating their apologies into English none of them had the breath to speak. The backup agency could send someone Thursday. It was Tuesday. The Dubai flight left tonight. The German team had a second meeting tomorrow. The Japanese delegation considered postponement an omen. Dr. Park steadied herself against a window and made a call that would have terrified her a month ago and now felt like breathing. "Amara," she said, "can you come upstairs?" The boardroom filled. Blue suits, black suits, white thobes, silk ties, and the quiet gravity of people who move countries with signatures. A girl in a navy blazer and a crisp white shirt took a seat at the center the way a pianist takes a bench, aware of keys and eyes and the exact dimensions of the silence. She began not with language, but with respect. A bow to Tanaka-san. Precise angle, correct, honorific. A Guten Morgen, Herr Muller, with consonants clipped like good German lines. An Allen Wasalin, Mr. Al-Rashid, with a welcome that felt like warm tea. The room's shoulders dropped. Gravity recalibrated. For 6 hours, she built bridges no map had promised. The Japanese insistence on long-term trust, rendered without erasing American flexibility. The German environmental standards, translated as design challenges, not bureaucratic numerals. The Arabic commitment to ethical finance, codified so their religious council could endorse without caveat. At hour 4, the deal threatened to collapse over a three-way regulatory knot. German law required certifications that American practice didn't name. The Japanese partner offered tech that exceeded both, but needed assurance of 10-year continuity. The Arabic side required a compliance review that would add time. Amara didn't translate the arguing. She translated the fear. "He worries," she said in English, nodding to Muller, "that if we rush certification, the plant will pass on paper and fail in reality." To Tanaka, "They will honor a decade only if we honor a decade's worth of listening." To Al-Rashid, "They will wait for review if we pledge that profit never outruns principle." By hour 6, the knot had a bow on it, and then the doors blasted open. Grant burst through in litigation mode, a folder like a flare. "This proceeding is invalid," he announced, face flushed. "International contracts require certified legal translators." He searched for a word that would wound and chose the one nearest. "Unqualified." Silence did not plead. It evaluated. Tanaka-san spoke first in Japanese, tone even. "私は多くの通訳者と仕事をしてきました。彼女ほど意味を正確に伝える人にはほとんど会ったことがありません." Amara delivered it in English that preserved the humility without draining the authority. "I have worked with many interpreters. I have rarely met one who conveys meaning as precisely as she does." Her Muller followed, in German with that bluntness that is really a form of care. "Rechtliche Qualifikation ist wichtig, aber Bedeutung ist entscheidend." Sie versteht beides. Legal qualification is important. Meaning is decisive. She understands both. Mr. Al-Rashid, in English, because he wanted Grant to feel every syllable. "We came to sign with competence, not credentials on paper that crumble under pressure. This young lady preserved both our principles and your profits." Grant's mouth opened and found nothing to carry. Dr. Park slid a sealed envelope across the table. "Independent proficiency assessments, blind scored," she said. "Our outside counsel has also prepared a framework that pairs Amara with a licensed legal interpreter for the formal execution pages. Process satisfied. Quality preserved." They signed. Cameras clicked. The city exhaled. Someone started a rumor that the stock graph looked like a bow. Outside, in a corridor that still smelled like lemon cleaner, Angela waited with her cart. She held out a pack of crackers and a smile that had lost none of its humility and all of its fear. "For after heroes finish working," she said. "Mom," Amara whispered, sudden and small. "I'm still just me." "Good," Angela replied, tapping her daughter's forehead lightly. "The world needs more you." Press stories multiplied like birds. Some flew well. Girl, 13, bridges 3 continents. Some perched crooked. Janitor's daughter rescues deal. Angela clipped none of them. She wasn't raising a headline. She was raising a person. Dr. Park used the spotlight for policy. Skills first pathways, the internal memo read. Degree requirements eased where they had always been stand-ins for competence. Language certs offered to any employee. Paid time for learning. A formal portal where anyone could list skills outside their job description and a mechanism to test them fairly. The portal filled like a dam, finding cracks in stone. A night security officer with a civil engineering degree from Lagos who could read soil reports. A cafeteria captain with a PhD in economics from Caracas who could price volatility like a chessboard. A front desk attendant who spoke 7 East African languages and understood how to fix things without making anyone lose face. They were not charity cases. They were blunt arguments for better outcomes. Costs dropped. Deals sped. Customer satisfaction soared because dignity translates even when service scripts fail. One Friday, the elevator opened onto the executive floor and didn't close again because the hallway filled with people the floor had never met. Staff in uniforms, badges, sneakers. A scholarship banner drooped in the wrong place and looked perfect. The Hidden Talent Initiative was awarding its first cohort of grants, tuition, certification fees, time stipends. Dr. Park made the first announcement. Miguel Santos, she said, night janitor, civil engineer, now our new compliance engineer in training. Applause that sounded like ends beginning. Fatima El Cid, she continued, cafeteria captain, economist, now our risk analytics fellow. Donna Morales, she added, front desk attendant, polyglot, now senior liaison for East Africa operations. The applause was louder for promotions than it had ever been for profits. That's how a culture tells you what it's becoming. At the back, Grant stood with a paper cup, looking gauche in a suit that used to intimidate. He'd fought the initiative, then tried to ride it, then found he was learning more by serving on its committee than by resisting its tide. He approached Angela, not for a performative hug, but for an honest conversation. Mrs. Williams, he began and stopped. A different sentence filed in. Angela, I wanted you to know I've recommended you for facilities program manager. Angela laughed softly. So, you're giving me your job? He winced, ready for the sting he deserved. She handed him a napkin. I don't want her job, she said. I want one that means I can hire people like me before life teaches them to hide their brilliance. Behind them, Amara accepted a certificate she didn't need to be valuable and a scholarship she did need to be safe in a world that sometimes eats its prodigies. She would be paid, supervised, respected, and protected. Childhood and responsibility would walk together, not devour each other. Corporate myths say instant karma is a memo. Real change is slower and stranger. It looks like a billionaire writing notes while a janitor explains airflow. It sounds like sir and ma'am, said with mutual respect. It feels like a floor cleaner's reflection in a glass wall becoming indistinguishable from a COO's. Because both are humans doing work that matters. 5 years is a long time in markets and a minute in human possibility. Horizon's revenues tripled. Leaks in budgets and pipelines slowed. Lawsuits dwindled not because lawyers grew smarter, but because listeners did. The Hidden Talent Initiative certified more than 10,000 multilingual professionals worldwide. Some at Horizon, many elsewhere, all in places where respect had once been an optional flavor. On the 40th floor, sunlight pooled on the conference table where it had once felt like a guillotine. The brass plaque on the door read, Global Communications, Director, Amara Williams. Today's docket included 3 things. A quarterly with Tokyo, a keynote at the UN about cross-cultural risk, and a 2 p.m. appointment that security had flagged as unusual and Dr. Parr had approved as necessary. The appointment arrived at 1:54 p.m., early because humility often is. The suit was off the rack. The watch was gone. The expression was new. Miss Williams, Grant said, and looked at the plaque again as if translating it from the past. Amara. She gestured to the chair across from her. He sat like a student. I've applied to the foundation, he blurted, then steadied. Community Outreach Coordinator. I don't expect. I don't deserve, but I've been volunteering at the City Language Library for 2 years. Kids teach me more than I can carry home. I wanted you to know I understand the cost of the sentence I threw at you. What sentence? She asked, because sometimes you let the person say it aloud. Translate this. I'll give him all my job. I meant it as cruelty. You heard it as a contract. I didn't keep it. You did. She watched him for a long second, and saw what time had sanded down. Pride remains, but it doesn't always have fangs. There's a probationary period, she said. 6 months. You'll recruit overlooked talent, not by taking photos with them, but by listening long enough to measure what they can do. You will report to my mother. He smiled in self-defense, then realized it wasn't a joke. I would be honored, he said, and found he meant it. Later, Amara walked to the window where the city ran its cacophonous poem. On the sidewalk below, a kid in a school uniform carried a backpack too heavy and a dream too quiet. Inside, on a bench outside facilities, Angela coached a group of new hires through emergency signage protocols in 3 languages, because safety is a dialect that must be spoken fluently. Dr. Park joined Amara at the glass. Any regrets? She asked. Only the time it took us to hear what was already being said, Amara replied. But maybe people need a story to learn truth. What truth? That merit is not a pedigree. It's the work you can actually do. And respect is not a bonus. It's step 1. She pulled out her phone. Messages waited from Tokyo. Your suggestions saved our face and budget. Berlin. New filters pass with praise. Dubai. Your amendments honored both our law and our God. Another ping landed from Busan. A harbor liaison had sent a photo of a whiteboard with her Korean apology template on it, laminated and smudged by helpful hands. Amara sent a single reply that worked in any language. Thank you. I hear you. Somewhere, a kid stepped into a library because the internet at home was a rumor. Somewhere else, a boss looked at a uniform and asked about a life. These are small revolutions until they aren't. Instant karma. People say, like justice falls out of the sky. But it is usually built, word by word, apology by apology, translation by translation, by the same people the world mistakes for background noise. Once upon a boardroom, a billionaire slammed a contract and dared a girl to prove she belonged. She did. Then she wrote better contracts and dared the world to prove it could belong to everybody. It's a dare worth answering in every language.